Welcome to this advanced tactical explainer. Have you ever watched a match where a team of absolute superstars just gets completely dismantled by a squad that cost, honestly, a fraction of the price? Well, that right there, that's the power of tactics. Raw talent is amazing, obviously, but a meticulously organized unit, it can run circles around disjointed stars. If you're tired of just, following the ball around the pitch, and you really want to deeply understand the strategic chess match happening right in front of your eyes, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're graduating from basic observation to elite analysis. We're going to decode the complex systems that top coaches and analysts use to completely dominate the modern game. Let's get into it. Okay, let's just dive right in by shattering one of the biggest misconceptions in football with this quote. Pressing isn't about running, it's about controlling space. So many fans, they see a team sprinting all over the pitch, completely dripping in sweat, and they think, wow, they're pressing incredibly well. But actually, raw running distance does not equal tactical dominance. The absolute best pressing teams in the world don't just run hard, they run smart. Their ultimate goal isn't just to blindly chase the ball like a dog in a park, but to meticulously manipulate and suffocate the space around their opponent. Moving on to Section 1, the defensive architecture, where teams choose to defend. To really understand how teams control space, we first got to look at their foundational setup. Think of a defensive block as the starting line for a team's defense the exact moment they lose possession. Looking at the different approaches here, let's start with the high block. This is where a team defends right up near the opponent's penalty area. Managers like Jurgen Klopp, they're famous for this. His gegenpressing system literally feels like the opponent is being swarmed by angry bees. The massive advantage here? Well, if you win the ball, you're already incredibly close to the goal, so you can create high-quality scoring chances in seconds. But the risk? Man, you leave a massive, terrifying amount of open space behind your own defensive line for a quick striker to just exploit. Then we have the mid-block, where the team essentially waits around the halfway line. This is actually the most common block in professional football, mostly because of its perfect balance. It controls the center of the pitch, it's tough to break through, and players can patiently wait for specific triggers to start pressing, without exhausting themselves in the first 20 minutes. Next up is the low block. Here a team defends very, very close to their own penalty area. The lines are highly compact, deliberately inviting pressure. The advantage is that it's incredibly difficult to break down because there is simply no space between the defenders. The heavy risk, though, is that you're letting the opponent completely dominate possession and dictate the tempo of the entire game. Now, it's really vital to distinguish this standard low block from its much more extreme cousin, which brings us to our next point. And that is the ultra-low block. You've almost certainly heard TV commentators call this parking the bus, a phrase Jose Mourinho famously brought into the English football lexicon. And it is exactly what it sounds like. Almost every single player is stationed entirely behind the ball, heavily concentrated inside and around their own penalty box. The aim here isn't to play beautiful, expansive football. No, the aim is psychological warfare and sheer survival. They simply do not want to concede a goal. You'll typically see teams deploy this drastic, frankly frustrating strategy when they're desperately protecting a tight lead in a final, maybe facing a significantly stronger and wealthier opponent, or just trying to survive after going down to 10 men. All right, Section 2, the art of the trap. Intelligent versus aggressive pressing. So, now that we understand the static starting positions, let's get into the dynamic action. Elite teams, they don't always just press immediately. Instead, they lay traps. This beautifully illustrates exactly how a tactical ambush unfolds on the pitch. Look at step 1. The defending team deliberately leaves a passing lane open. They're inviting a pass to what looks like a completely free center back. The opponent takes the bait and plays the ball. Then, boom, the trap is sprung. Step 2, the striker instantly closes the center back down. Step 3, at that exact millisecond, the winger darts in to block the escape pass to the fullback. Step 4, the midfielder aggressively shifts to completely block the central passing lane. That center back who thought he had all the time in the world, in 3 seconds flat, he just became the victim of a perfectly coordinated, highly intelligent pressing trap, and he is about to lose the ball in a very, very dangerous area. And honestly, it gets even more strategic than that. Top teams don't just chase the ball randomly. They actively guide their opponents into specific areas of the pitch. Instead of letting the opponent play beautifully through the middle, a striker will actually curve their run to cut off the center of the field. This leaves the player on the ball with literally only one available pass, out wide towards the touchline. By steering the press this way, the touchline literally becomes an extra defender. An opponent can't pass through the chalk line, right? By using the touchline as a literal brick wall, you've suddenly trapped the opponent in a tiny fraction of the pitch, severely limiting their options and drastically increasing the chance of an interception. But here is the golden rule you absolutely must remember. One player pressing completely alone is entirely useless. If a single player sprints at the ball while the rest of the team just stands still, the opponent will easily pass right around them, taking that pressing player completely out of the game. Notice the 4 non-negotiable elements mapped out here for successful team pressing. First, exact distance between teammates. This ensures players can cover for one another. Second, constant communication keeps the whole unit synchronized. Third, total compactness denies the opponent any ability to pass through the lines. And finally, perfect timing ensures the ambush happens before the opponent even realizes they're in danger. If even one of these elements is missing, the entire pressing system collapses like a house of cards. Moving to Section 3, Escaping the Matrix, How Elite Teams Beat the Press. Of course, elite teams know how to press, which means elite teams also have to know how to survive the press. When the pressure is suffocating, how do top teams actually get out? Well, here are the specific tools they use. First, third-man combinations. This is an absolute favorite of managers like Pep Guardiola. Player A passes to player B, who immediately finds player C running into a newly vacated space. It completely scrambles the defensive mapping. Next, quick one-touch passing. You're simply moving the ball faster than the defenders can physically react. Third, switching play. If the opponent has collapsed all their pressure into a compact shape on the right touchline, you launch a long diagonal pass to exploit the completely free left side of the pitch. And finally, utilizing press-resistant players. Think of a midfielder like Sergio Busquets or Rodri, those incredibly rare, super calm individuals who are constantly scanning the field and just never panic. They operate with a remarkably low heart rate even when surrounded by 3 aggressive defenders.
And that brings us to Section 4, Seeing Beyond the Scoreline, Analyzing Like a Pro.
I really love this comparison because it perfectly highlights the tactical depth you've just unlocked. Imagine you're watching a match. A casual fan looks at the screen and simply says, "Liverpool are pressing high." But an elite analyst, which by the way is exactly what you're becoming, looks at that exact same play and says, "Liverpool have set up in a high block, steering possession towards the right touchline before activating a coordinated pressing trap. Their front 3 are working together to cut off central passing lanes, forcing hurried decisions from the opposition." Do you hear the difference there? You are no longer just describing raw physical effort. You're explaining the deeply ingrained systematic organization behind that effort. And this brings us to an ultimate professional tip. Most new commentators and casual viewers, they'll loudly praise a defender only after they make a sliding, dramatic tackle. But elite analysts, they notice what happened before the tackle. Often, a tackle is just the final, desperate result of really good team organization. The real magic wasn't the tackle. It was the invisible structure that forced the pass. The perfectly timed trap, the deliberately blocked passing lane. The defender actually already knew exactly where the ball was going to go because the entire team's pressing structure orchestrated the opponent into making that specific error in the very first place. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a challenge. Next time you sit down to watch a match, don't just watch the ball, watch the space. Seriously, try looking away from the player in possession for just a few seconds. Ask yourself, who is actually controlling the invisible geometry of the pitch? Did a pressing trap force that poor pass? Which passing lanes were deliberately blocked by an angled run? Once you see the matrix, once you start looking for these invisible tactical battles shaping the game, I promise you, you will never watch football the same way again. It goes from being just an entertaining sport to a brilliant masterclass in strategy. Thanks for diving into this with me, and I absolutely can't wait for you to spot these systems in action.